The day I lost everything, my job, my savings, even the apartment I once felt so proud of, I didn't go to a bank. I went home, but what I received wasn't comfort. It wasn't even a hug. My brother, Alexander Reed, looked straight at me and said something I will never forget. You need to take responsibility for your own life. No one disagreed. No one spoke up. There was only silence, colder than any rejection. I stood there in the very house I had helped keep alive. LA and Daya, Sai. The house where the electricity bills, the repairs, even the hardest moments, all carried traces of me. And then I realized something more terrifying than losing everything. It wasn't that I had failed. It was that I had never truly belonged there. That night I left, with nothing but a suitcase, and a truth I could no longer ignore. But what I didn't know then, that quiet decision to walk away, would be the very thing that made my entire family pay the price. My name is Charlotte Reed. I'm 35 years old. In my family, I've always been given a very beautiful label, the strongest one. It sounds like a compliment. But in reality, it was just another way of saying, she doesn't need anyone. I live in Seattle, working long days from early morning to late at night, handling everything in the coffee industry, from operations management to crisis control when things fall apart. My life isn't perfect, but I've always tried to make sure I never became a burden to anyone. And maybe that's exactly why they forgot I was still their daughter. Meanwhile, my brother, Alexander Reed, was always the center of every family story. He could fail. He could make mistakes and still be forgiven, protected, chosen. And me? I was the one they remembered, only when everything started falling apart. Have you ever realized there are families where nothing is said out loud, but everyone already knows who matters more? In my family, that was never a secret. Alexander Reed, my brother, was always the first choice. No matter how late he showed up, how badly he messed things up, or how many poor decisions he made, there was always a reason to forgive him. He's just trying his best. Give him more time. And me? When I did things right, it was expected. When I worked hard, it was normal. When I stayed quiet, it was because no one ever asked. I still remember the first time I truly noticed the difference. It wasn't during an argument. It was in a very small moment. I had just fixed a financial problem for the family, and and no one said a word. But the moment Alexander walked in and spoke a few sentences, the entire room lit up. That's when I understood something very clearly. In this family, I was the one keeping everything from falling apart, but he was the one they called the pride. No one in my family ever asked if I was tired, because they were so used to me always being fine. I sent money home every month without being asked. I paid the bills no one wanted to talk about. I fixed financial problems before they had the chance to become crises. And when Alexander got into trouble, I was the one quietly standing behind him. No one knew, no one asked, and no one ever said thank you. I remember one night staring at my bank account, watching the balance drop almost to zero, just to hear my mother say, family is supposed to support each other. But somehow, that family only worked one way. I gave my time. I gave my money. I gave up my own sense of security. And in return, I got silence. And the most painful part wasn't losing all of that. It was realizing that not one of them ever thought I was someone worth holding on to. And then, the inevitable finally happened. The company I worked for shut down. No warning. No preparation, just one short email, and everything I had built for years was gone. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't the stable one anymore. I wasn't the person standing behind everyone else, fixing things. I was the one who needed help. And in the most natural way, I thought of my family, not because I was weak, but because I believed, after everything I had done, at the very least, I had somewhere to go back to. So I went home. I didn't expect much. Just one simple question, are you okay? But what I received was a distant look. Alexander stood there, arms crossed, looking at me like a stranger, and he said, you need to learn how to stand on your own. I turned to my parents, but they said nothing, and in that moment, everything became clearer than ever. I wasn't going back home. I was just returning to a place I had once believed was home. There are truths that don't hurt you right away, but once you understand them, they shatter everything you once believed. I didn't discover it during an argument, not from a confession, but from Numbers. One evening, I opened an old account. Transfers, temporary help, urgent family expenses. They were all there, clear, cold, and emotionless. At first, I was just reviewing them, but then I started connecting the dots. The money I had sent home was never used to keep the family stable the way I had believed. It had been redirected to Alexander to help him put a down payment on a house, to cover his failed investments, to maintain the image of a successful man in everyone's eyes. I sat there for a long time. I didn't cry. I wasn't angry, not yet. There was only one feeling. Everything finally made sense. It wasn't that I wasn't good enough. It was that my role was never to be loved. I was simply the one meant to make someone else look successful. There comes a moment in life when you stop wanting to explain yourself, not because you no longer feel anything, but because you finally understand everything. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I didn't try to prove I was right. I just stayed silent. I looked around the familiar room, the place I once called home. I looked at the people I had spent years trying to please, and realized I had stayed far too long in a place that was never meant for me. I didn't say a long goodbye. I just picked up my suitcase and walked past them, like a stranger. No one stopped me. And that said everything. At the door, I paused for a second, not to turn back, but to make sure I never would. In that moment, I didn't lose my family. I only lost the illusion that I ever truly had one. And for the first time in my life, I chose myself instead of trying to be someone else's choice. Starting over isn't the scariest part. The scariest part is starting over alone. In those first days, I wasn't as strong as people thought. I woke up in a room that didn't feel like mine, with no one I could call family. There was no one left to lean on, but there was also no one left to hurt me. So I did whatever I could. Small jobs, long shifts, exhausting days, just to keep myself from falling apart. Some nights I would lie awake and wonder, if I had tried a little harder, would they have ever chosen me? But then I realized that question didn't matter anymore. What mattered was this. For the first time in my life, I wasn't doing it for anyone else. I was doing it for me. Little by little, I rebuilt my life. Not fast, not easy, but real. And one day, standing in a small space I had created on my own, I finally understood something. I didn't lose everything. I only lost what was never truly mine to begin with. People only realize your value when you're no longer there. At first, everything stayed the same. My family believed they would be fine, just like before, because they were so used to having me behind the scenes. But this time, I didn't come back. No more quiet transfers of money. No one fixing Alexander's bad decisions. No more backup plan whenever things started falling apart. And then the cracks began to show. My parents' store started losing revenue. Bills piled up with no one to carry them. Alexander, the one they once called the Pride, began to reveal everything he had been hiding. One mistake after another, debts started to surface. And for the first time, no one was there to clean it up. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need to come back to prove anything. I only needed to walk away. And the emptiness I left behind said everything they had never wanted to admit. There are calls that don't come because they miss you, but because they have no other choice. My phone lit up after months of silence. The name on the screen, still familiar, but the feeling was no longer the same. I stared at it for a long time. Not because I didn't know what they wanted, but because I knew exactly. In the end, I answered. My mother's voice wasn't as gentle as it used to be. There was urgency, a trace of panic. "Charlotte, we need to talk." We, a word they had never used. When I was the one who needed them, in the background, I could hear Alexander. No confidence, no arrogance, just a tension he had never known before. For the first time, they weren't calling me because I was strong. They were calling because they weren't strong enough anymore. I didn't interrupt. I didn't blame them. I just listened, the way I had for so many years. But this time, something had changed. I was no longer the one who would run back to save them. And maybe they were finally starting to understand that. There are answers that don't need to be loud, but are powerful enough to change everything. I let them speak. Every explanation, every reason, every struggle they had never shared, when I was the one who needed help. And for the first time, I didn't feel guilty. I didn't rush to fix things. I didn't think about what I should do anymore. I was just calm. "Charlotte, we need you." My mother's voice trembled slightly, a sentence I had waited years to hear, but it came when it was already too late. I took a slow breath. Not angry, not cold, just clear. I needed a family once, I said quietly. But back then, no one chose me. There was silence for a few seconds. I could feel them waiting for me to soften, like I always did, but not this time. I didn't hang up right away. I didn't say anything more. Because some truths, once they've been spoken, don't need any further explanation. I used to believe that. If I tried a little harder, if I gave a little more, they would finally see me. But they didn't. People who don't choose you will never choose you, no matter how much you sacrifice. I didn't win against them. I didn't go back to prove anything. I simply stopped trying to be loved in the wrong place. And strangely, that was the moment I finally started living my real life. What about you? If one day you realize you've always been the one giving, but never the one being chosen, what would you do? Stay. Or be strong enough to walk away?